Hi everyone, it's Wednesday Weather Academy for you. I got the duties this week, so we're going to talk a little bit about fall as well as storms. So let's start out with the season that's coming up upon us. You know, there's different kinds of fall. There's what we call meteorological fall, which makes it very easy. You just take September, October, and November and call that fall. It's actually the time where the average high and low temperatures start to fall. Okay, and then you've got traditional fall or astronomical fall, and that's determined by the equinox, which this year is on September 22nd at 9:30 in the morning Eastern Daylight Time, and that's when the sun's rays are directly over the equator. And equinox is a Latin term meaning equal days and equal nights. So there's approximately 12 hours of darkness and 12 hours of daylight on the equinox. And then the third thing that happens is the thing that happens on the first weekend of November here, and that's going off of daylight time back to standard time. And that's when you switch your clocks back an hour early that Sunday morning. And what that does is it shifts the daylight back into the beginning part of the day and takes it away from the evening. And of course, the daylight is dwindling throughout until the first day of winter in December. Now, fall can bring with it stormy weather. And if you go back just a couple of years, on October 2nd, we had tornadoes, 3 in Crawford County and 1 in Warren County. And if you go back to, well, let's talk about November, a fall month, we had a tornado in Mill Creek and Erie in 2017. So you can still get thunderstorms and some severe weather. Let's talk a little bit about lightning right now, because that can certainly happen any fall month and even in the winter with thunder snows. What you've got in one of these big cumulus clouds that turned into a cumulonimbus cloud, you got ice particles, ice crystals, and hail bouncing around, and that's similar to what happens if you're in a dry, warm room and you take your shoes off and you rub your socks across the carpet, you go over to touch the metal doorknob, you get the zap. Well, that's the separation of charges by collision of ice particles in the upper atmosphere, and they always try together. To get together, that is, the positive and the negative charges. So just like touching the doorknob, the lightning is that channel that is caused by the coming together of the positive and negative charges in a cumulonimbus cloud. So a lot of times the top is positive, the ground or bottom portion of the cloud is negative, and the ground itself is positive. So what you can get is you can get cloud-to-cloud lightning, and you can also get cloud-to-ground lightning. And luckily, 80% of the lightning that happens stays in the clouds, while 20% of it, on average, reaches the ground. So here's the deal. You can get what's called out-of-the-blue lightning strokes, and that means you may not even be under the rain shaft of a thunderstorm. You may be in partly sunny skies miles away. Up to 10 miles away, lightning can strike. That's a positive flash. It's very dangerous. It's out of the blue. It's unexpected. And that's why we have some certain parameters for lightning and lightning safety, because those cloud-to-ground strokes certainly can be deadly. We always say when thunder roars, go indoors. So it can strike miles away from the parent thunderstorm, and that's why we use that phrase. If you can hear the thunder, you want to be away from the outside. So let's give you some interesting stuff, fun facts to swap and share about lightning and thunderstorms. Lightning is measured to be hotter than the surface of the sun, 5 times hotter. Lightning is measured to be about 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, the surface of the sun about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're dealing with a lot of heat. Another very interesting statistic here is lightning fatalities. These are the top 10 states for lightning fatalities in the United States. Now, you would expect Florida, because that's kind of the lightning capital of the U.S., or perhaps a Gulf Coast state like Louisiana and Texas. But in that top 10, we're in the bullseye. Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York State in the top 10. So we get a lot of lightning fatalities, and that's why we're always preaching lightning safety. As you round out the list, you go into the Midwest, places like Tornado Alley, which is more known for severe weather, but certainly a lot of lightning. But as you get to the west coast here, of course, you've got the Pacific Ocean, which is cooler than the Atlantic, so it inhibits thunderstorm and severe weather formation in California, Nevada, Oregon, as well as Washington and some of the Pacific Northwest states. More things about lightning. Obviously, safety tips, you probably heard all of these. Stay away from water and metal because they conduct electricity. So you've got things like rivers, and you've got things like metal bleachers at sporting events, and things like trees and open spaces. All those four things lightning is attracted to. So again, when thunder roars, stay indoors. Get away from those open fields, topless hills, ridges, trees, and other tall objects. How does lightning get going? Well, it's all started with a thunderstorm, and we're commonly aware of this in the spring and summer, but as I said, we can get warm days just like we're getting this week in the fall that can produce thunderstorms. So it starts with the sun. What the sun does is it heats the ground, okay? And then the air rises. Think of your house, you know, coolest in the basement, hottest in the attic. So as warm air rises, it finally hits a cooler level where it can't hold the moisture anymore. That's called a condensation level, and that's where your clouds start to form. And if you keep that lifting going, you get the first stage of a thunderstorm, which is called the cumulus stage. And that is the updrafts, air rising, forming those cumulus clouds. But to have a true thunderstorm, what goes up must come down. And that's in the second or mature stage. The clouds continue to grow into a cumulonimbus clouds, and you get updrafts and downdrafts. And that's when you get lightning and thunder and rain and sometimes hail and wind. Now, when the air going down is greater than the air going up, the thunderstorm dissipates, okay? And you know, you need air to go up to form storms, so when it's only coming down in that dissipation stage, the storm will collapse, weaken, and possibly completely dissipate. Let's talk about a nasty side effect of a severe thunderstorm. See this big old mustache-looking cloud? This was taken in Crawford County a couple years ago. That's called a shelf cloud, and that is the edge of a severe thunderstorm. That's where the air is rising over the top, and this thing, which looks like an atom bomb, a mushroom cloud, is the downdraft. It's not only air going down, it's air going down very rapidly and dangerously. And that's when a downdraft becomes a downburst. So let's talk about this idea of a downburst. Storm setup for you. You've got a strong thunderstorm. You have the air going up. And then what happens as you look into that top of the storm where that hail is bouncing together and then there's heavy rain, the updraft weakens. Guess what takes over? Just like the dissipation stage of the thunderstorm, all of a sudden you start to get a ton of air weighted down by water and ice crystals or hail descending very rapidly to the ground. These downbursts can be as strong as an EF0, EF1, or EF2 tornado. They're not a rotational wind, they're a cloud to ground downburst wind. And you can see the destruction they can do, especially as far as aircraft is concerned. If you're taken off in a plane, you get a little initial lift. But once you get into this area where the air is rushing down, the plane can be crushed into the ground. So pilots are very aware with terminal Doppler radars and reports from the ground to avoid downbursts because they can crush a plane and kill all the passengers in it. Some more stuff on downburst. You've got the micro kind, which is a smaller variety, microburst, 2.5 miles wide or less. So that is a smaller area affected by the downburst. And then you've got the macro burst, which is an area over 2.5 miles wide. So just imagine that, an area greater than 2.5 miles across with a devastating wind coming down on top of whatever is on the ground. And you have things like crushed trees and houses getting destroyed by these micro or macro bursts. So there's all kinds of damage, but nothing's better than a bird's eye view. This is from our storm chaser a couple of years ago. Steve Marshall got into that downburst that you saw the picture of earlier in Crawford County that looked like the mushroom cloud with a big mustache. So here he is in his storm chase vehicle. Now he's going to open the window here, and you can see that the air is coming down here and spilling out, just like you're holding a big bucket of water on top of a ladder. That's, the air is analogous to the water. It hits the ground base, and then it spreads out in all directions. So you can check out the low visibility of that intense rain combined with that intense wind. And I believe in this microburst, and you can see how double duty his windshield wipers have to go just to keep up with it. I believe he clocked a wind over 80 miles per hour, okay, on his anemometer on top of his storm chase vehicle. And you can see the devastation that this can cause, just blowing things all over the place. Thankfully, we don't see this phone pole go over, but it's common to have that happen with these microbursts, trees getting blown down, damage to houses, and of course, we touched on the airplane disasters that have happened in the middle of microbursts. So again, fall, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, can still bring storms. Most of the storms are not severe, but we have evidences here in Erie County and Crawford and Warren County of downbursts as well as tornadoes that can happen in the months of September, October, and November. And of course, your JET team of meteorologists, Craig, Tom D, and I will be here and give you the latest should this kind of threatening weather occur. Hope you've enjoyed your Weather Academy for today. Hope you learned something. We'll be back next week with more.